North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news, honestly, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. That is most assuredly not the news. Just my opinion. Just as valuable as yours. So share it. A couple of ways you can do that. First of all, you can look right here and you can see the telephone number. Studio line, 817-379-2172. It's right there. It rings right there. Operator is standing by. And you can do that. Or you can go to the chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. By all means, avail yourself of that so that what we can do is find out what you're thinking regarding the news of the day and whatever commentary I share with you. It's you have carte blanche invitation. By all means, join us. This is breaking news. This is 2 minutes old from the Wall Street Journal. The Supreme Court said today that a months-long investigation has so far failed to identify the person who leaked the draft opinion overruling Roe v. Wade last May. It's the first public statement since Chief Justice John Roberts announced the probe, a day after Justice Samuel Alito's draft opinion was published by Politico. The team has to date been unable to identify a person responsible by a preponderance of the evidence, said the court's unsigned statement, using the legal term for the lowest standard of proof in any case. The court included a statement from Michael Chertoff, a former federal circuit judge and Secretary of Homeland Security who was asked to independently review the investigation supervised by Supreme Court Marshal Gail Curley. Mr. Chertoff and Ms. Curley said their staff conducted a thorough investigation within their legal authorities and made recommendations to prevent future leaks, such as restricting access to documents and using software similar to that employed by publishers to limit access to advanced copies of book manuscripts. The May leak, while not necessarily unlawful, was an extraordinary breach of protocol for the court. They tightly control their deliberations for obvious reasons. The Wall Street Journal reported last week that investigators narrowed their inquiry to a small number of suspects, including law clerks, but officials have yet to conclusively identify the alleged culprit. Today's report made it clear the investigation largely has come to an end. Investigators continue to review and process some electronic data that has been collected, and a few other inquiries remain pending. To the extent that additional investigations yield new evidence or leads, the investigators will pursue them, said Marshal Curley. The Marshal's report said no evidence suggested an outside party breached the court's computer systems to access the draft. Investigators conducted 126 formal interviews of 97 employees, all of whom denied disclosing the opinion. The report said also investigators focused on law clerks, recent law school graduates who serve for a year, assisting a justice, and permanent employees of the court, according to the report. Like I said, this is breaking news. We will give you more as soon as we know more about that. And what's important here is that it's not necessarily a breakage of law, but it most certainly is a breakage of protocol. Perhaps it should be law at some point. That's for other people to discuss. And we can too if you want to. But I'm just saying that this is something that came out of this report that is interesting to me, that maybe no laws have been broken. Now, what would happen if it turns out to be a clerk? What would happen if it turns out to be an employee? Clearly, they would be immediately dismissed. What would that mean for their futures? These are all things you got to keep in mind. Once you go through that door, it's really, really hard to go back through it. But that's not the only thing the Supreme Court has done. The Supreme Court rejected a bid by New York gun retailers. By the way, that first story was from Wall Street Journal. This is from Fox News. The Supreme Court has rejected a bid by New York gun retailers to block a slew of new gun control laws in the state, which they argue violate the Second Amendment and hurt their businesses. There were no noted dissents in the order of or explanation from the judges for their decision. Quote, "We are disappointed that not one of the 9 justices saw fit to grant the plaintiffs some stay of enforcement of new laws against them," said Paloma Capana, the lead attorney for the New York gun retailers, speaking to Fox News. We are challenging the ability of the state of New York to target dealers in firearms in the lawful stream of commerce to put them out of business, which is what the new laws will most certainly do, said Campana. So it really was unfortunate to see that we could not get any emergency temporary injunction against those laws. New York Attorney General Letitia James praised the Supreme Court decision. She said the gun safety laws help save lives and keep our states safer. The order from yesterday came 1 week after the High Court rejected a separate bid by gun rights activists to block Concealed Carry Improvement Act. That's the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, which was implemented last year by New York's Democrat-controlled legislature. New York lawmakers passed that bill rather after the Supreme Court struck down the state's prior concealed carry laws in June of 2022 in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Incorporated v. Bruen. Justice Clarence Thomas wrote the opinion for the court that the Second and 14th Amendments protect an individual's right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside the home. The new law prohibits carrying a gun in sensitive areas such as stadiums, houses of worship, museums, parks, and other public places, imposes revised record keeping and new safety requirements on retailers, and mandates background checks on all ammunition purchases. That is not going to last. It's just simply not going to last. I'll tell you more in just a couple of minutes. Just my opinion. Campana, the attorney for gun retailers, argued the new record-keeping laws could amount to an unconstitutional gun registry. The list of new mandatory compliance goes so far as a turnover of acquisition and disposition records, which the state of New York attorneys have admitted will be used to create the first ever gun owners registry housed at the New York State Police. Multiple challenges to the new law are continuing to play out in lower courts. And by the way, in case you're wondering, that is why the Supreme Court has decided to go this route. The case isn't ready to be heard by the Supreme Court. When it is heard by the Supreme Court, and certainly because of the ammunition registry, then it will be overturned, just like the other laws were overturned. And the law is too broad, when it talks about sensitive places like stadiums and stadiums and hospitals and stuff like that. What it is a list of now soft targets. And that's just not something that you want to do. You just don't want to do that. I mean, this is something that may work in the vacuum of a state legislature or the ego of an anti-American governor. But all I can tell you is that let me see if I can find this thing again. Okay, here we go. Stadiums, houses of worship, museums, parks, and other public places. That's the broadness, the overbroadness of the law. Other public places, no, that's not going to last. And the ammunition registry is not going to last either. But like I said, and like was reported by Fox News, all this stuff is something that is going through the court system as we speak. And this will be turned aside because you just can't have an ammunition registry. You don't get to have registered weapons in the United States. Like I said, though, I have been in a place where you had to register your firearms. It wasn't my rifles, but it was my handguns. And that was Las Vegas, Nevada. I did it. Did any terrible things happen? No. Could terrible things have happened? Yes. And just because I'm innocent, by the way, doesn't mean I don't have rights. I do have rights. And one of those rights is to keep and bear arms. It's really not any business of the Las Vegas, the Clark County Sheriff's Department, whether or not I have weapons or not. I mean, I've never been in trouble with the law. I never will be in trouble with the law for any reason. But to actually come up with some way of tracking ammunition purchases, background checks for ammunition purchases, huh? Well, that's just not going to go anywhere. I mean, I buy my ammunition online. I do. I buy my ammunition online. And that is the most convenient way to do it. And all I can say is, hey, enjoy this law while you can, because the Supreme Court's going to stomp all over it when they get a chance to. And by the way, the idea that Letitia James, the Attorney General for the state of New York, can sit there and say it makes your community safer, you're nuts. You're absolutely nuts. It doesn't make your community safer. And we've got proof. The law has been in effect and crime is still going up. This is not something that these people are actually doing for their stated purpose. That's not what they're doing here. What they're doing is they are trying to train an entire generation of Americans to believe that the state will take care of everything. They won't. They can't. They simply cannot. And you simply do have the right to defend yourself in the public space. You do. That's America. And once again, we keep electing the wrong people to administrate or to, shall we say, govern this nation. We keep electing the wrong people. When you're against the First Amendment, when you're against religious freedom, when you are against the Second Amendment, when you are against the protection of the citizenry of America's intellectual property, when you are against, and that's the Fourth Amendment, when you're against the idea that there is due process, which is the Sixth Amendment, and you can be canceled for not wearing the right practice jersey. An NHL player is in hot water because he refused to wear a gay pride, a warm-up jersey in his team's warm-up, and he's in trouble. And there are calls to have him drummed out of the National Hockey League. I mean, that's a violation of the First Amendment. It's a violation of the First Amendment, violation of due process. We have rights in this nation, and those people who work to subjugate those rights for political reasons are anti-American. These are the rules, the laws of the land. The citizenry has these rights, and they shall not be infringed. They shall not be infringed. Now, there are times when people will say, now, wait a minute, the Second Amendment is not an absolute law. They don't rank them. Just because they're numbered doesn't mean that they're ranked in order of importance or in order of enforcement. People say, well, you don't want people walking around with automatic weapons. It doesn't take automatic weapons. It doesn't. I saw a video of a guy break up an armed robbery, and he fired 9 shots in probably, 8 seconds. No, it's far less than 8 seconds, probably 6 seconds. Okay, you don't need automatic fire. Now, that's just my opinion. There are people that sit there and go, yee-haw! I mean, that's fine. It's just too expensive for me. I'd rather put one well-aimed round on target than fire 6. If I want to fire 6 rounds at the same time, I'll use a shotgun. I'm just saying. I mean, that's one of those weapons that is really underrated. I mean, I'm telling you. But this is shotguns, I mean. But the thing about it is that, if somebody wants to do that, I think that's fine. I think it's absolutely fine. Should you pay a much higher price, say, for example, if you use an automatic weapon in the commission of a crime? Yes. But just because back in the 20s there were gangsters using machine guns doesn't mean that the rest of us should not have that infringement removed from the Second Amendment. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. A very good analogy was just brought up by one of the people on the chat room when it comes to automatic fire versus semi-automatic fire. With weapons, he said, I used to unravel the Black Cat firecrackers I used to buy so I could use them one at a time. And I said, yeah, that's what I used to do. Because you could learn all kinds of things because of that. And I evoked something I used to do when I was on KLIF here in Dallas, and that was the El Cheapo Deluxe Fireworks Spectacular. And it always turned out to be the El Cheapo Deluxe Fireworks Spectacular. I did it on July 4th, and sometimes on New Year's Day. And what it ended up doing was I ended up getting this planter. And I ended up getting this planter, and I took the plant out of it. It was plastic. I mean, it was plastic. Anyway, so what I would do is I use this big planter, and I'd light a firecracker and drop it in it and go bang. And I said, and then we'd have applause and all that kind of stuff. It was, I always thought it was funny. My producer at the time, Shotgun Scotty Jones, would scratch his head and go, what? And, but man, when I put it in that planter, that sucker was loud. Speaking of loud, an armed Arizona gas station clerk, while we're on the subject of weapons, shot a would-be thief during a botched robbery after the alleged suspect pointed a gun at customers. A masked man stormed into a Chevron station just before 5 a.m. Wednesday and aimed his gun at the clerk, Avondale police told KSAZ-TV. The clerk, who was working the graveyard shift, told the outlet the suspect mumbled the words rob and money. In reality, he didn't need to say anything, said the clerk, identified as Brian. The moment he pointed the gun at me, it was pretty obvious what he was there for. The clerk said that when the robber pointed the gun at customers, he jumped into action, shot the suspect. He trained for such situations, he told the station. He trained for such situations. Listen, I'm telling you, weapons defense is a perishable skill. You have got to train. And train. And train. I do it all the time. My brother from the Texas State Guard, Gary Olivier, and I, we go out and we train. He's a gold star. He's a Gold Shield detective from upstate New York police. And he knows everything there is to know about that. And so what ended up happening was, hey, we go out and shoot because you have to. If you're going to make a decision to carry a weapon, you better know how to use it when and why. And if you don't want to carry a weapon, for crying out loud, carry a first aid kit. I mean, I'm serious. And learn how to use that. And that's a perishable skill. Anyway, the suspect became distracted by another person in the store. The store employee took the opportunity to pull out and use his own firearm, shooting and injuring the suspect. The unidentified suspect was taken to a hospital in critical condition. No other injuries were reported. Brian, good shooting, Tex. Way to go. That's something to keep in mind if you're planning on robbing a convenience store. If you're planning on robbing a convenience store, may I suggest that you revisit some of the stories that I have reported of people defending themselves with weapons. May I please admonish you that if you decide that you're going to go into a gas station or what have you, wave a gun around, that may be one of the last things you ever do, especially here in Texas. Now, that was in Arizona, but Arizonans have their independent streaks. They do. And this country is better for it. This is the Wells Report. I feel good today. I really do. And I don't know why, because I got like 4 hours of sleep last night. Must be the vitamins. I take vitamins. I have a special concoction of vitamins. I feel great. I hope you do too. You got something to say to me, by all means, say it. Use the chat room or give me a call. Isaac Tate, training is essential in today's times. Absolutely. Absolutely. Good for you, Isaac. Thanks. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. You hang in there now. We're going to take a quick break, but we shall return with more news of the day, including another gun event that's not so good. Back in a moment. Howdy. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Support the broadcast. I realize that my little crawl down on the screen here, well, actually, the little crawl down there, it's going slowly that way. Everything's backwards when you're on camera. Remember that when you're doing your own podcast. Anyway, support the Wells Report. You can do that a lot of different ways. Share this broadcast with your friends. If you think that there's anything valuable about this broadcast, by all means, share it with your friends. You can also give us a thumbs up or a like or something like that, depending on the platform that you're on. And we're on a bunch of them. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, and also Rumble. And by the way, if you're watching on Patreon and Rumble, this broadcast was recorded earlier in the day. You can get it live by going to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And it's going to be great to see you when you show up. If you'd like to support the show financially, please do so. It only costs like $1 a month. This is the cheapest subscription that you'll ever find. It's like $1 a month. You can pay more if you want to, but that's not necessary. I mean, if I get everybody who watches this broadcast, listen to this broadcast to pay $1, I'll be making, $120, $130 a month. I mean, this is, Anyway, support the Wells Report. It's cheap. Go to patreon.com but not free. Cheap, but not free. Go to patreon.com /the Wells Report and sign up. I would sincerely appreciate it. Keeps these cameras on. Keeps me gainfully employed, and I'd like to be able to do that. So help us out. Support the Wells Report any way you can. It doesn't have to be money, but it sure would help. We're talking a little bit about weaponry today. And there's something that I've got to lead here. Guns, weapons are dangerous. There is a rule. Don't point a weapon at anything you don't want to shoot, especially when it comes to people. Just don't do it. Because no matter what situation you're in, a weapon is an instrument of deadly force. And so if you are in a situation where you are working with your weapon and so on and so forth, make absolutely sure it's not pointed at anything you don't want to shoot at. Alec Baldwin did not follow that rule. A director is dead, and someone who was working with the director was wounded. This happened on a movie set. You've heard all about it. Alec Baldwin is now officially in trouble. According to USA Today, Alec Baldwin will be charged in the 2021 shooting death of a cinematographer during a rehearsal on the New Mexico set of his Western movie Rust. According to the Santa Fe District Attorney, he announced that today. Baldwin is 64 years old. He was holding the gun at the time it was fired. Rust armorer Hannah Gutierrez Reed will also be charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. This, according to Santa Fe District Attorney Mary Colmack Altwies and Special Prosecutor Andrea Reeb in a news release. Cinematographer, director of photography, Halnia Hutchins. She was 42. She died shortly after being wounded by a gunshot while setting up a scene at a ranch on the outskirts of Santa Fe. October 21st, 2021. Baldwin was pointing a prop pistol at Hutchins. The gun fired. It killed her and wounded the film's director, Joel Souza. Assistant Director David Halls, who handed Baldwin the gun that day, signed a plea deal for a charge of negligent use of a deadly weapon, according to the DA's office. He has a suspended sentence and 6 months probation. No charges will be filed in the shooting of Souza. Baldwin's attorney said the charges represented a terrible miscarriage of justice. Quote, the actor had no reason to believe that there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set. He relied on the professionals with whom he worked, who assured him the gun did not have live rounds. We will fight these charges, and we will win. This, according to Luke Nikas, Nikas, in a statement to USA Today. Gutierrez Reed's attorneys said Jason Bowles and Todd J. Bullion said in a statement provided to USA Today, quote, Hannah is and always has been very emotional and sad about this tragic accident, but she did not commit involuntary manslaughter. Quote, these charges are the result of a very flawed investigation and an inaccurate understanding of the full facts. We intend to bring the full truth to light and believe that Hannah will be exonerated of wrongdoing by a jury, unquote. By the way, the lawyers for Halls did not return calls and requests for information by USA Today. Attorneys for the Hutchins family, widower Matthew Hutchins and son Andros, thanked the Santa Fe sheriff and the district attorney for the charges in a statement shared with USA Today, calling them warranted for the killing of Halyna Hutchins with conscious disregard for human life, unquote. It continues. It is a comfort to the family that in New Mexico, no one is above the law. We support the charges, will fully cooperate with this prosecution, and fervently hope the justice system works to protect the public and hold accountable those who break the law. This, according to Hutchins' attorney, Brian J. Panish, in a statement. In announcing the charges, Carmack Altwies said, quote, after a thorough review of the evidence and the laws of the state of New Mexico, I have determined there is sufficient evidence to file criminal charges against Alec Baldwin and other members of the Rust film crew. On my watch, no one is above the law. Everyone deserves justice. Andrea Reeb, a special prosecutor appointed by the DA to the case, added, quote, if any of these three people, Alec Baldwin, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, or David Halls, had done their job, Halyna Hutchins would be alive today. It's that simple. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of criminal disregard for safety on the Rust film set in New Mexico. There is no room for film sets that don't take our state's commitment to gun safety and public safety seriously. Santa Fe County Sheriff Aiden Mendoza, who led the initial investigation into the Hutchins death, described a degree of neglect on a film set, but he left decisions about potential criminal charges to prosecutors after delivering the results of a year-long investigation in October. The report did not specify how live ammunition ended up on a film set. That is a mystery. But once again, you know me, when it comes to weaponry, and I don't care whether it's in a theatrical sense or anything, a weapon that is capable of firing a projectile is a deadly force instrument, and you have to treat it that way. You absolutely do. And if there's going to be a shot fired toward people, there has to be some kind of a barrier. They make them. They're bulletproof glass. They're not even that expensive. And there has to be a barrier whenever a situation like that occurs. Now, apparently, this was a rehearsal that Mr. Baldwin was taking part in. And whatever happened, it is an amazing tragedy. It is terrible. But it's an object lesson for everyone. Don't point a weapon of any kind at someone that you're going to shoot, that you could shoot. Don't even think about it. It's essential. It's absolutely essential. And on a movie set, I've done a little bit of acting in my time, including firearms acting. And I got to be honest with you, we took extreme care to make sure that there were no live rounds anywhere close to the theater where we were working or the rehearsal halls where we were doing it. It's just not something you can do. And I don't understand, of all the things in this, how was a live round on the set in the first place? That is negligence. It's pure and simple. So Baldwin, known for his roles in 30 Rock, The Hunt for Red October, his impression of former Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live, which was right on, described the killing of Hutchins as a tragic accident. Carmack Altwies and Reeb say they'll file charges with New Mexico's first judicial district court by the end of the month. After that, Baldwin and Gutierrez Reed will be formally arraigned, and the judge will decide if the case will move forward to trial. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this, besides the safety aspect, which I simply cannot be more forthright and more committed to weapons safety. Okay, I don't expect this case, the criminal case, to get much beyond the initial court appearance. the judge will very likely decide that Alec Baldwin is absent liability for this from a standpoint of actually shooting this poor woman and the director of the film behind her. What I can say is this. The armorer, on the other hand, is in trouble. She is in trouble. And once again, if you're an armorer, you simply can't allow live rounds anywhere near prop weaponry. You just can't do it. I mean, that's rule number one. That is rule number one, up to and including. Okay, thanks for coming to the set. Empty your pockets. I mean, she's in trouble. And there are a couple of other things that we need to discuss regarding this because it's been in the media. First of all, Alec Baldwin is kind of notorious. He's kind of the bad boy actor, just like his brothers. Well, in this particular case, what I'm seeing is that I'm seeing this is an over-prosecution. This is an over-prosecution. This will be handled in civil court. And I don't think that Alec Baldwin has a leg to stand on when it comes to civil court action. That being said, this is a case where Alec Baldwin is, in my view, based on everything I've read, and I've read everything that's been printed, is absent guilt in this, beyond the idea that you don't point a weapon at anything you don't want to shoot. And that's a safety rule. And as far as I know, that is not a law on the books in New Mexico. The armorer, like I said, she's in trouble. And then there are a couple of other things. First of all, the very first thing, or maybe not the first thing, but certainly one of the very first things that Alec Baldwin did was engage a lawyer. There's been an awful lot made of this. Well, my God, Alec Baldwin immediately lawyered up. Yes. Anybody who's in a situation like this, I'm a member of U.S. Concealed Carry. The first thing I do after I call my wife to say, okay, I'm okay, is to call United States Concealed Carry and say, okay, here's the situation. He's being criticized for lawyering up. That is absolutely what you have to do. You absolutely have to lawyer up. First thing. And if you don't, you're a fool. So let's keep this in perspective. The other thing that's being talked about is, well, Alec Baldwin is a rich and powerful man. He's not going to be sent to jail. It's not because he's rich and powerful that he's not going to be sent to jail. And by the way, I'm not perfect when it comes to these predictions, but I'm pretty sure that the judge is going to set this aside for Alec Baldwin, not the armorer. She's going to go to trial for involuntary manslaughter, and she should. But Alec Baldwin is not that guy. And people are going to say, well, the armorer is the meek and weak person who just doesn't have the kind of power that Alec Baldwin has. Well, you know what? You do. You have the power of being competent. Now, I'm not trying to try her in this program. That's not right. But I am pointing out the realities. She should have known better. A reasonable person would demand that she know better. And apparently she did not. And it cost someone their life. And that is horrible. I mean, that was a 45 long Colt. It's one of the most effective handgun rounds in the history of the history of weaponry. It's a very good round. Not in favor much anymore, but still. Yeah, I'm going to get to that comment in just a couple of seconds there, Gary. But Alec Baldwin did exactly the right thing by getting a lawyer. He also did the exact right thing many times in his career to be able to garner the success that he's had and the ability that he's got to be able to afford reasonable law protection, legal protection. And so let's keep this in perspective. Now, Gary Absher points this out. He says this, quote, Baldwin is an idiot. Just because you can regurgitate a script doesn't make you smart or an expert on anything. When it comes to weapons, no one is smart or an expert on everything. Like I said, this is perishable. Now, don't get me wrong. You might have a certificate somewhere that says that you are an expert with a firearm, but that's temporary. You put that weapon down for a month, and you're going to be rusty when you pick it back up again. Alec Baldwin should have spent quality time with a certified weapons instructor, firing real rounds someplace safe. And he didn't do that because he thought he knew what he was doing. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us. So someone said on the chat room, do you think someone might have done this on purpose? No, I don't think somebody did this on purpose. I think this is exactly what it looks like. An incredibly tragic accident, because there were a lot of people that thought that they knew a lot more than they obviously did. And it cost someone their life. And they should be held accountable. The article that I was talking about from USA Today did say that these people are being sued, Alec Baldwin and so on and so on. And they should be. They should be. And there has to be some kind of recompense and some kind of some kind of accountability. So the following that I'm about to show you is creepy. The reason it's creepy is because, I mean, it's creepy and it's kind of cool, but the reason I say it's creepy is because you know how I feel about artificial intelligence. You know, if we do that just right, you know, human beings are going to be like the squirrels in the park being taken care of by benevolent people who throw them nuts. I think the pursuit of artificial intelligence is unavoidable, but I'm very, very concerned about what it means for the future of America and the future of human beings, by the way. And things like this, that doesn't really give me a whole lot of any kind of solace whatsoever. I want you to take a look at Atlas the robot. This is from what is it, from Boston something or other? I'll get it to you while I'm watching the video with you. Check this out.
Forgot my tools again.
There's Atlas. I don't know why Atlas picks up the board. Now, this is a robot. Grabs the tool case. Oh, okay, that's why he put up the board. All right, I see. That's not a human being.
Such a show off.
Yeah, such a show off. I want to thank USA Today for showing that to us. Yeah, such a show off. Yeah. And it's creepy. Do you think that's creepy? Yeah. Alicia says, extremely creepy. Beth Ann, by the way, hi, Beth. She shows up at the same time. She's so sweet. She says, hello. Hello, Beth. She says, I saw that weeks ago. I get it. I didn't see it until today, and I wanted to share it with you. What do you say about something like that? I mean, yeah, the new robots freak me out too. Now, there's some things that, there's some things I want to put out there. This, by the way, is from, hang on a second, I had this a moment ago. This is from Boston Cybernetics, I believe. Okay. Boston Cybernetics is the group that did this. Let me double check this. Boston Dynamics. Boston Dynamics. The thing that I think is really good is that sooner or later, people who have lost limbs, like many of my brothers in the Texas State Guard, people who have lost limbs will soon be able to have limbs that are replaced. And if you notice that robot, when he jumped from one thing to another, you know, he gave a little bit. That's new. That is incredibly sophisticated from a programming standpoint. Now, were these moves programmed in advance and probably worked out several different times? Maybe. But that's not really the point. The point is this robot was able to put up a board, and I saw the thing, and now I know why, and he used it to get over to the scaffolding. Well, obviously he can see well enough and has the physical acuity to be able to run across that board. He did that better than human beings. But what I'm hoping is that someday some of this amazing technology will be applied to people who have lost their limbs for one reason or another, and be able to move around as if there's nothing wrong. And I hope that's the case. As for the rest of it, you know, I really I really have to say that these robots will be able to move faster than we can, just like artificial intelligence will think faster than we can. And people say, John David, you don't have to worry about it. Don't sweat it. There are people that'll fix it. Well, yeah, except people aren't designing these machines. Other machines are designing these machines. I'm not looking at a conspiracy. Ease up. What I'm saying is that we're about to create technology that thinks faster than us and moves faster than us. And we won't know when artificial intelligence is better than real intelligence because it will quite literally be beyond our comprehension. Spooky, huh? This is the Wells Report. Back for hour number 2 in a moment. Yeah, I'm freaked out. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. How you doing? Hope you're having a great Thursday. Hang on, Jim. I'll be right with you. Yeah, what do we do here? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That is not news. That is just my opinion and just as valuable as yours. And by all means, make sure you share yours with us. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. If you missed the last hour, go back and listen to it. Pretty good, if I do say so myself. And we talked a little bit about artificial intelligence and my, I think, totally justified concerns about artificial intelligence and the world's greatest publicist who handles publicity for the Wells Report and can do so for you. If you have an event coming up or if you need publicity, you need to call Jube Dankworth, who joins us on the telephone you can use too. Hi, Jube. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's great hearing from you.
Well, you were talking. Pardon?
I was going to start talking about robots and AI. What?
Yeah, you were talking about AI. And I was talking about AI, and am I nuts, or is there any justification for my nervousness?
Oh, no, absolute justification for the nervousness. People are saying at the same time that it's going to ruin jobs, and at the same time it's going to create whole new industries, just like, remember when the VCR came out, it was going to kill TV.
Yep.
Remember when the Walkman came out, it was going to kill radio.
It did.
And iPods and playlists were going to kill music. Every time we've had a bump like this, there's no more wagon makers, but there are automobile makers. So we've got all of this going. But the fun thing about AI, and I've spent, I'd say about 20 to 30 hours this month watching all the wonderful YouTube videos because everybody's talking about it, is the same as when computers came out. When computers came out, they were going to do everything, but you had to put in all of these numbers and run them through the computer. Then that spit out something. You had to run it through. I remember when running databases took all night long. Even when we had the Apple, the beginning of the Apple and all of that, the advertisements and the hype were so much more than what you could actually do on your computer. And that's what I'm finding with the AI right now. I've been working with the ChatGPT and OpenAI. So what's happening now is the developers, i.e. people that write the software and make software, they're using the API and integrating it and upgrading their software, which is fabulous. I just found out that Tailwinds, which is part of Pinterest, has just opened a whole segment called Tailwinds Ghost, and it helps you make posts and social media and all of that. Chat API, you still have to, it's like when you see these factory videos where the machine does so much, then the person has to put it in a cart, move it over, take it to the other machine. That's basically what's happening right now with AI, is you get it to do this, then you have to take it, put it into another one. Now, if you want to spend a lot of money, I don't know if anybody, well, ClickFunnels has one now, but I don't know of people that have everything in one software where you can do it all at one time. But so it's still in baby stages. It's still in baby stages of toddling around, and it's kind of, saying a few words. But, we've known this is going to happen way even before Schwarzenegger's movie. The main thing is that humans have a lack of moral compass, and they're the ones that are making these machines.
Yes.
So these machines are not going to have a moral compass.
Right.
I don't care about Asimov's, law of the robots. Unless someone programs that in, it's not going to happen. It is the way of the future. I was telling you, I think at the beginning of the year, that this is the biggest jump in the internet since social media, and it is just as big a jump.
Yeah. Well, in this particular case, I think about the future. like for example, there was a thing called what I called daytimer brain. Remember when daytimers came out and you wrote down everything? It was all analog, obviously. This wasn't, but then again, I've got a version of it. It's called calendar. Anyway, but I wrote down everything and I was absolutely totally organized and superb at getting to everywhere I had to be exactly right on time. I knew what was next. It was fantastic. And then after I'd done it for a while, I realized I could not keep track of stuff in my own mind, which I had done before I started using a daytimer. And when it comes to computers, you know, I use calendar, and once again, that perpetuates not being able to keep track of the calendar in my head. And I also use it for a whole bunch of other things that have changed me. In other words, you know, I used to really enjoy having a computer around. Well, now I have to have a computer around. And so I mean, I take one with me just about. Yeah, Mike Renouy says, yeah, like, do you have any idea what the phone number of the person you just called from your smartphone is? The answer is no, I don't. When I want to call my son, I haven't memorized his phone number. I just go to Colton and I punch it and it goes right through. And so, yeah, when I look at all this, I'm really concerned. You know, it is going to change human beings. And I'm not exactly sure that the amount of brain power that I used to use to keep track of my own telephone numbers, my own calendar, I'm not sure that was replaced with something that is more valuable.
Yeah, one of the YouTubers, he called his dad, asked his dad to do a long division.
Yeah.
And his dad was able to answer it, you know, immediately. He called his friend, and his friend wasn't able to do it in his head. So, you know, there's also a meme of, I wonder what my brain is doing with the part that used to memorize all the phone numbers,
right,
which is what you're talking about.
Exactly.
You know, it's also like kids used to be able to recite the Gettysburg Address or whatever, and they can't do that anymore. So, because they don't have the focus, and that's part of the education part. But yeah, it will change you if you aren't doing something else with your brain.
Yeah,
you need to still be doing things to learn and to expand, other than just learning how to use the new software.
Yeah, Jube Dankworth is our guest. She is from netmediaconsultants.com. Netmediaconsultants.com. Now it's in your mind; you'll never forget it. netmediaconsultants.com. She's joining us today. We're talking about artificial intelligence and how it's actually impacting our lives even as we speak. The other thing that I wanted to bring up on this was we just saw an incredibly sophisticated robot do something that used to be done by an apprentice. Now, that guy was setting up a scaffold in this particular scenario. And normally what would happen is that you would ask your apprentice to go get the toolbox. Well, now that job is going to be replaced by the commercial version of this incredibly sophisticated Boston Dynamics robot. And so what's the apprentice going to do? And then that goes to the next step. Okay, so this guy's building a scaffolding. He used to have an apprentice to learn how to build a scaffolding and learn this trade. Now that's gone. And so what? The next person building, and I say person because, you know, these computers, AI is getting to the point where, you know, you sort of have to start, you know, minding your manners. I do with Siri, you know, so, well, I do because I'm that guy. But the thing about it is that pretty soon the person setting up the scaffolding is going to be a robot.
Well, my brother used to work in a factory, and he was on the line. And then he got retrained, and he was working on the robots that were on the line.
Well, yeah. And right now there is a McDonald's. I don't know where it is. It may be in Southern California, where you walk up to those kiosks they have in McDonald's and you order your burger, and it's built by, the burger is cooked and prepared by an automated assembly line and delivered to you.
Yeah. Right, but somebody has to supply the assembly line.
Well, yeah, that might be until they figure it all out. I mean, you know, and the thing about it is, once again, Are we literally outsmarting ourselves?
Or do we all become the Jetsons?
Yeah, it would be nice to have a flying car that fits in a briefcase. But what people forget is, how heavy is that briefcase? I mean, come on. I mean, let's start thinking about physics while we watch our cartoons. It's so silly. Anyway, but like I said, I think what we're doing is we're replacing humans. And one of these days we're going to, Mike says we're dumbing down ourselves. And one of these days we're going to be in a situation where we sit around and watch TV, and Rosie the robot, to evoke the Jetsons again, is gonna bring us a plate of food that she cooked herself, and we're gonna be sitting there watching television. And then pretty soon, horror of horrors, there are gonna be enough sophisticated robots so that they'll even be able to watch television for us. Who wants that? In other words, we're making ourselves useless. Are we not?
Remember in the 70s when they said that entertainment and other relaxing industries were going to grow by 50 to 60%. We thought, no, people aren't going to watch that much TV. And guess what they're doing?
Yeah. I mean, the information age that has now morphed into the computer age, discussed by Alvin Toffler in Future Shock. I mean, we live that every single day, and his worry was that we were just going to be bombarded with so much information that we weren't going to be able to deal with it. Well, that was not true, although it was a great book. It hasn't been true so far, because we do have more capacity in our minds, in our brains, than we actually use, especially me. So what I look at here is I'm looking at the concept of outsmarting ourselves. And I'm really concerned that is where we're going. There is one other thing I wanted to ask you about.
Mhm.
What do you think about the possibility of somehow putting someone's mind into one of those artificial bodies? I mean, is that going to be the salvation of human beings, insofar as we embrace enough technology so that at some point we live inside one of those robots?
I don't see that, because we are triune beings. We're body, soul, and spirit, and you can move the soul into one of those mind, will, and emotions into one of those machines, but you can't move the spirit into one of those.
Well, I don't know. Whenever I have these conversations, I go to Star Trek, and they were able to beam people around, and their minds were intact when they materialized on the planet or wherever they were going.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think about stuff like this. Jube, if people want to get in touch with you, what do they do? Where do they go?
They just go to netmediaconsultants.com, fill out the form, or they can call me. It's my number's on the website.
Outstanding. So use your computer that you can't live without now anymore, and get in touch with netmediaconsultants.com. The phone number's there. Jube Dankworth. You've done so much for this broadcast. Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts on artificial intelligence.
Thank you.
All right. Take good care. And Jube Dankworth joining us here on the Wells Report. How very cool. You see, the phone works. 817-379-2172. Stick around. Back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. It works, okay? See how simple and clear that was? By the way, we have rules on the phone. Don't put us on speakerphone. Jube was talking on a headset. Anyway, that being said, you can call us on the phone. Sorry, I was exercised. The executive producer of the Wells Report is Dirk Steele. He works at Steelboy Studios in Denver, Colorado. You'd be amazed. Did I say Colorado? I said Colorado. It's Colorado. Anyway, he says to learn more about artificial intelligence and transhumanism. We're all going to be trans someday. Is that right? I guess we better start being more polite to the LGBTQ community. Anyway, follow Joe Allen, Allan, at joebot.xyz. Yeah, I'm a little bit crazed about that. And by the way, I got that from my phone. Gary says, I don't know why we still call them phones. They're little computers. I haven't hooked my computer up in almost 2 years. I do everything on this Android gadget. They're pocket computers, says Mike Renwee. Yes, they are. Can you imagine a bunch of robots playing football? Yeah, but nobody would care. Nobody would care. I mean, all athletic pursuit is the celebration of human capability. I really don't see. Of course, we'll probably get our butts kicked with an AI boot because we weren't watching robots play football. But then again, we got battle bots. I mean, what's that? Let's see what else. By the way, Mike Renwee says you don't have to be polite to these people. Alexa knows the sting of my boot. What are you going to do when you know the sting of Alexa's boot? I'm just asking. Yvonne says backup cameras in cars. People don't know how to back up without them anymore. Yeah, but they sure make parallel parking a lot easier. Eddie Jones brings up something that spooks me very badly. He says, by the way, these robots are going to be building themselves soon. Yeah. And don't worry, someone has to stock the materials. I don't think so. The McDonald's of the future will be a McDonald's, right? And what'll end up happening is that a drone will come and drop all the supplies into some sort of sorting edifice that will handle it. And no, there won't be anybody there. Let's see. We're dumbing ourselves down. That's fact. I think there's a McDonald's in Fort Worth that is automated. That's true. But the one in Fort Worth wears a cowboy hat. So you got to keep that in mind. By the way, Chris Grimes, one of our new friends here on the Wells Report, says, by the way, being able to do this transhumanism, if you will, that would eliminate brain damage and lifelong musculoskeletal problems to the combatants. Yeah, but I was wondering, okay, so where would you keep the backup to your brain? Mine, a teacup would probably do, but still, where would you keep that backup? We are obsoleting humanity. Yeah. McDonald's robots flipping burgers. Holy George Jetson, Batman. Look at your lawnmower. The change in my life alone. Mike R says, talk about a living hell. Yeah, can you imagine? Living in a robot and having to go get your oil changed. Not that men over 50 don't know what that's like, but Gary says, yeah, Chris, it's scary. I filed my taxes with this gadget. I could do it right now while listening to the Wells Report without a radio. Please teach me how to do that. Oh, God. Maybe we should call in, but I'd rather do what I'm doing now. I know. That's why people use the chat room. Avatar touched on that with AI. Stealth was a decent AI movie about an AI fighter jet going rogue. Yeah. By the way, one of these, you remember the story I told you about this poor Chinese guy who was working with an industrial robot and it inserted a bunch of pins into his body? Yeah. Do you remember War Games? Can we play a game? AI computer takes over controls of nuclear weapons. Yeah, I remember. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Cute little conversation about artificial intelligence. You know, I'm not obsessed by it, but I'm worried about it. I haven't yet seen the kind of discernment necessary to be able to provide us with AI-powered implements or machines or assistants or what have you. I haven't seen as much discernment from human beings that I need to be able to feel like this is a good thing. I'm just saying. Let's see, where are we here? Let's get back to other things. I want to thank Jupe Dankworth and Dirk Steele for adding their 2 cents to the AI thing. You can do that too, 817-379-2172. Or what you can do is you can join the chat room, which I refer to on a regular basis. USA Today put out a very good article that you need to be aware of. It has to do with classified documents at the home and personal office of President Joe Biden when he was the vice president. And there's a little bit of bias from USA Today that I want to point out here. The revelation of classified documents at the home and former personal office of President Joe Biden has turned into a White House crisis. It's not a crisis. It may be a political crisis, but then again, they exist in a paradigm of unreality to begin with. This does blunt President Biden's momentum from the midterm elections, hands Republicans new ways to attack. Adding to the blowback has been the inability or unwillingness of the White House to answer several basic questions about the handling of documents which date back to the Obama administration when President Biden served as vice president. Here are the 5 questions, according to USA Today, that must be answered. Why didn't the White House publicly disclose the documents immediately? They say perhaps the most perplexing question remains why the White House did not publicly disclose classified documents immediately when they were found at both locations. Instead, the White House waited until CBS News reported the discovery on January 9th to confirm that a batch was found November 2nd, 6 days before the midterm elections, which answers the question. They did not point this out because the midterms were coming. And yet, upon confirming one batch of documents, the White House did not reveal the president's personal attorneys found additional documents on December 20th. That is correct. And so what we end up doing is we end up looking at, okay, they had these documents, they knew this story, and they kept it under wraps. Not good. Really bad. Yeah. So then on Saturday, the White House confirmed more pages of classified materials, 5 more pages of classified material for a total of 6 in an adjacent room of Biden's garage. 2 days before, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, when asked about the search, said you should assume it has been completed. Now, remember, during the Trump years, they wanted Trump's lawyers to swear under oath that all the classified documents had been found. They didn't do that with President Biden. Let's see. Biden's attorney said they notified the National Archives immediately after the November 2nd discovery, the Justice Department after December 20th. When pressed about the lack of timely transparency, the White House has defended itself by pointing to the Department of Justice's initial review of the documents, which has now turned into a special counsel investigation. Okay. So the analog is you go in, you rob a bank, and then you have second thoughts going out to your car. You drive to the nearest FBI office because that's an FBI crime. That's a federal crime. And you turn all the money in as soon as you got it. Did you still rob the bank? The answer is yes. You still rob the bank. Let's see. Bob Bauer, one of Biden's personal attorneys, said the president's lawyers have attempted to balance the importance of public transparency where appropriate. Yeah. The next question from USA Today, have all the documents been discovered? It's unclear. I would suspect that everybody has gone through every box in every Biden house to try to find some of this stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean you won't find one in a stack of newspapers or in a sock drawer or folded up in a book somewhere. It's unclear whether all the Biden documents are now found or whether more could turn up. More could turn up, but the damage is already done. And remember, I've been extremely straightforward about this. I don't buy into all the hype and the politics. Like I said, politics exists in an unreal world. These are obsolete documents. We don't even know whether they've been declassified by the normal declassification process yet. And that we haven't gotten any kind of information about that means that maybe it's likely that they haven't been, or maybe something else is afoot. Following the first discovery of classified documents in November at the Penn Biden Center, Biden attorneys adopted a protocol to suspend the search and notify the Justice Department when future documents are found. As a result, Biden's lawyers can't guarantee that more documents won't turn up. That's a little leap of logic there, a small leap of logic. What they're trying to do is inoculate the president from more documents turning up. Damage has been done. Let's see exactly how many Biden documents have been found. We still don't have a figure. White House counsel's office described a small number of classified documents found at the Penn Biden Center, which President Biden used after the Obama administration. And Biden's home. Officials have not provided a precise tally. The lack of clarity is yet again, according to Biden lawyers, because of their protocol to stop searching and bring in the Justice Department when a document is first located. The problem with all that is that why wasn't the FBI involved in the first place? They sure were when it came to President Trump. Let's see what else. By the way, also, do the personal attorneys have a security clearance? The White House counsel is now looking at all these things. He does have a security clearance, but still at the end of the day, if this is such a big deal, then how come attorneys without security clearances are looking these things over? And then there's this. What's in the documents? Asks USA Today. I got to be honest, I don't want to know what's in the documents. What we have also not seen is the speculation by the mainstream media that nuclear codes were contained in some of the classified documents. They did that with President Trump. Certainly didn't speculate as to what's in the documents, although we do know that some of the documents, or at least it's been reported, that some of the documents were from Britain, Iran, and Ukraine. And those are all eyebrow raisers. Okay. But what's in the documents, we probably won't ever know and that's interesting because if they are obsolete documents and they have been declassified and we don't know that, then by all means declassify them and let us see what they are. Unless they would embarrass the president or unless they're still classified. If indeed they are still classified to the point where we can't know what they are, then once again, there's big trouble there. Big trouble. Let's see. CNN reported the materials uncovered at the Penn Biden Center included U.S. intelligence memos and briefing materials that covered Ukraine, Iran, and the United Kingdom, but we still don't know anything more. And once again, this is USA Today saying, well, these are questions that must be answered. Then there's this. How did the documents get to Biden's home and his office? The White House has not said how classified documents that should have been turned over to the National Archives ended up in Biden's personal office and home. Richard Sauber, special counsel to the president, said the documents were inadvertently misplaced, called the situation a mistake. There's been no explanation as to why that happened. Okay, so the documents were in the vice president's office. When he was no longer the vice president, what ended up happening is that they packed them up in boxes and sent them somewhere. Where? We don't know. But then they got moved again from the Penn Biden Center, because obviously some of them were there, and to the garage. And some of them from the garage were then moved into an adjacent room, a library. Well, okay, that's not inadvertent. And so how did the documents get to Biden's home in the first place? Well, I'll say the same thing I said about President Trump. The Government Accounting Office has the job of packing up all this stuff. If it was packed up by the GAO, well, then you've got something to do with the GAO. if those things were packed up by the president or vice president himself, that's a different story. Many people have pointed out that President Trump stole the documents. Well, probably not. But once again, similar aspersions haven't been cast on President Biden. So once again, we have to have equal representation or equal justice under the law, and we don't have that. And that is very concerning. Very concerning. So how did they get to President Biden's home? We likely won't know because it unravels the political narrative, which is significant. Significant. What did I say when these documents were first discovered? What did I say the president should have done? I said this. He should have gotten out in front of the press. He should have said, man, after barbecuing my predecessor to find out that I made a similar mistake, well, it answered my own question. How could someone be so irresponsible? Well, now I know. And once again, we're working with the Department of Justice and all cogent agencies like DHS to do an assessment. And oh, by the way, I have dispatched everybody that I could find, and I invite the FBI to go to every other residence and go through everything at those houses to make sure that there are no more classified information. If he had done that, this would be over. And then he could say, well, look at the way I handled it versus the way President Trump handled it. Right? So once again, we got to have people that are running the country that are not afraid of the truth. Just tell the truth. I mean, okay, well, we can't tell the truth because what's going to happen there is the president, well, the people of the United States will think the president's a moron. Never mind. Anyway, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with just being honest? The answer is nothing. Nothing. This president wanted to be a unifier. What could be more unifying than to say, on 60 Minutes, I barbecued President Trump for his handling of classified documents, only to find out that I've botched it? Is that unifying or is that divisive? Once again, it's unifying. The people of the United States, they're pretty smart. They're pretty smart. They're pretty smart. They would say, of course, these guys have documents. There's another article in USA Today that talks about it today. There's been, I have reported based on personal experience and knowledge that honestly, these people have these documents. It's okay. They have security clearances. Are these things in a SCIF? No, but I will point out in President Trump's case, pretty close. Let's look at the difference. Garage with a Corvette, locked room that the FBI saw and said, please put a bigger lock on it. I mean, so once again, should anybody have these documents? Well, yeah, they should, because they're presidents. Souvenirs, what have you. Now, if after a going over of the documents, we find things that, lead to would be evidentiary in a criminal wrongdoing action against one of these guys, that's a different story. That's a different story. Because then what you've got is I'm trying to keep the evidence out of public sight. Well, that's obstruction of justice. And once again, just keep everything on the up and up. Just keep everything on the up and up. Just tell people the truth. These documents are at least obsolete. And if they're not obsolete, that points to either criminal wrongdoing or it does intensify, hey, you really screwed up. It intensifies the mistake. Now they say, well, we turned these things over to the DOJ as soon as we found them. Well, okay. If you would go ahead and say the same thing about President Trump, which, by the way, is true, He turned in everything as soon as he had them, and it was cooperating with the authorities right up until the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, a personal residence. And they made another mistake with President Biden trying to declare that, hey, wait a minute, this was the personal residence of the president. The only difference is that President Biden is a sitting president and President Trump is a former president. So that's as straightforward, balanced as any coverage you will see of any of this. I'm not worried about the documents. I'm not worried about the legalities. I'm worried about the politics. I'm worried about the divisiveness of all of it. We got to put all that stuff down. We got to put all this stuff down. We got to start acting like adults. We can do it, all right? This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. By the way, the Secret Service is going to start releasing visitor logs from the Delaware home of President Biden. There have been some people saying, immediately rushing to the conspiracy angle, oh my God, the Secret Service had to have time to be able to make these things up. No. Secret Service keeps track of everybody. And that has anything to do with the president. It's, as far as I know, unless we go back to President Trump, as far as I know, the deep state has not yet claimed the Secret Service. And once again, we really don't know. We don't know whether that's true. And the doubt is is rife. But I'm just going to say the Secret Service going to be offering guest logs, and that's okay. That's fine. Let's see what else. Some good things coming up on the chat room on this one. Isaac points out, hey, the key question, how do documents leave a skiff and end up in personal homes, Trump or Biden? Well, also Hillary Clinton. Procedures need to be tightened up. Not just procedures governing the movement of classified material, but also procedures need to be tightened up with regards to, okay, what can a president have? I would suggest the Trump model is probably the best. The president takes what he thinks he should have because, he's got the right, as long as he's talking about documents that were generated in his own administration. I believe that he should have the documents he wants. All right, especially when he's got Secret Service protection. So there's that. But we also have to figure out, okay, this presidential privilege thing. All of this, as I've said before, all of this was an opportunity to try to start punching holes in Donald Trump. That's what this is. This is a political exercise. But what we're left with is a whole bunch of precedents from politicians trying to nail President Trump. And it backfired. It blew up in their face. Suddenly, their president is guilty of the same things. They're trying to invalidate President Trump's ability to run for public office ever again. I mean, stop it. Stop it. Let's see. Gary says honesty is better than lying because you don't have to remember the lie. That's true. Politics is what's wrong. Let the American people see these documents. Let us decide. We pay for all this BS. I'm sure a lot of politicians would be in jail. Well, I hear what you're saying, but the idea that the U.S. government has far too many secrets, makes people nervous. Makes people nervous. And I got to be perfectly honest with you. There are things that are secret that don't need to be kept secret. There are things like, say, for example, what's the purpose of classification mainly in the first place? Well, it's to keep the nation's enemies from finding out things that they shouldn't know. Well, as soon as the enemies find out that information through other means, declassify it. Now, to a degree, that has happened, by the way. In case you're wondering, you know more about the United States submarine navy than you've ever known. I've got a book downstairs that talks about Cold War submarines. It's from Norman Palmer, who wrote that. And the stuff in there is amazing to me. The stuff that I'm reading about all these Cold War submarines, Victor IIIs and Delta IV submarines and blah, 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 Typhoons, etc. And American submarines. I found some things out about American submarines I didn't know. And the reason is because the John Walker spy ring gave up all the information we now know. And John Walker's still in jail, will be in jail for the rest of his days. Yeah, the Ohio class. We're learning stuff about the Ohio class that, man, that was the crown jewels of American intelligence. And there's a whole chapter on this submarine in there. I'm going, really? So we have too many secrets. And that's just one thing. The government has too many secrets. Now, there are things that have to remain secret. Sources and methods. Well, if you declassify something, then the people that are affected by it can go back and say, okay, how did they get this information? And then go back and work their way through. That's called counterintelligence, right? So sources and methods have to be protected. And those have to be protected for a very long time until the sources and methods no longer exist. The technology we use to get some of these secrets, is no longer necessary that we have that stuff, that we protect it. So release the information. I'm just saying. Because a government that has too many secrets, is a government that you can't trust. And if there was one thing that I would love to do with the United States government, I would treat it like a nuclear reactor. I'd make the government so safe you could turn your back on it. And we are not anywhere close to that. Not anywhere close to it. So let's see. Mike mentions that Tom Clancy novels were very, very good at that stuff. And that's true, but that was after the John Walker spy ring, just in case you want to know. That happened in the 70s. Tom Clancy didn't become a superstar until much later. That's hour number 2 of the Wells Report. Man, that one flew by. Back with more in just a couple of minutes. The news, analysis, commentary, and debate. It's the Wells Report. Back in a second. Hey, that was lively. Good show today. See you in a minute. I love this job. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. What do? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, which is not the news, just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. That is the Wells Report. Support this broadcast. It's worth it. It really is. I've said this often. This is not self-aggrandizement. I'm a pretty humble guy. But I will tell you this. If I wasn't doing this show, I'd be listening to it. I think there's value here. If you agree, support the show. I'll tell you how later this hour. There are a couple of things that have been going on in the last few days that involve who could be arguably enemies of the people of the United States. And they shouldn't be. They should be operating in service of the people of the United States, but they have not been. One of them is Eric Swalwell. The other is Adam Schiff. We're going to talk about Eric Swalwell because I have to talk about something that's essential to all of us. Eric Swalwell is in the news, this from Fox News, saying he and his family have been threatened by people who parrot House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's rhetoric. This is coming from MSNBC. So talk about bias. I mean, it's worthless to half of America. MSNBC is just off the scale bad. It's unwatchable. There have been times when this broadcast has had more people watching or listening to it than MSNBC has. And I've been doing Facebook and on a radio station or 2 or 3 or 5 or 20. But we've had a bigger audience than MSNBC, and that's a national network. That's how bad MSNBC is, pointing out bias, mind you. MSNBC's Nicole Wallace asked Representative Swalwell why Speaker McCarthy stripped him from his committees during a Wednesday appearance on Deadline, the White House. That's the name of the show. And Swalwell said, it's just political vengeance. No, Mr. Swalwell, it's because you sleep with Chinese spies. Sorry, it's not political vengeance. It's political cleanup. Okay? Anyway, he goes on to say, let's report the news. He says, quote, Kevin McCarthy seems to want to heat up the leftovers of a story that goes back to Barack Obama's first term. FBI has said 3 different times in a rare form they never talk about investigations, that all I did was help them, never suspected of wrongdoing. That's a quote, but makes no sense. Swalwell was apparently referring to his alleged ties to Fang Fang, a suspected Chinese spy. Beginning in 2014, Fang Fang worked to develop close ties with Swalwell's office, like spies do. This, according to Axios, McCarthy has said information he learned from an FBI briefing was the impetus to keep Swalwell off committees. Swalwell cited a Washington Post fact check in which McCarthy was handed 4 Pinocchios suggesting Swalwell did something wrong when it came to Fang. The Axios article never said Swalwell did anything questionable, the Post fact checker Glenn Kessler wrote. Glenn, boopy, you're a fact checker. You don't have any idea what was in that FBI briefing. You have no idea. It's classified. Should be. Because just like a lot of people, everybody, in fact, should have privacy. So should Eric Swalwell, whether you agree with him politically or not. You still, let's respect the man's privacy. Okay, so if he no longer qualifies for a security clearance, that's fine. Okay, let's just let him deal with that. That's personal misfortune. We don't deal with that here on the Wells Report. We do not report personal misfortune, even if it's self-inflicted. When I report on Eric Swalwell, it's just to point out facts. Mr. Swalwell, you slept with a Chinese spy. Man, your security clearance goes bye-bye after that. That's not political vengeance. That's cleanup activity that should have been done by your party when they found out. Once again, if they just be straightforward, forthright, honest, what have you, they'd have a conversation with you. Nancy Pelosi would have a conversation with you in a private office, say, hey, this invalidates you. We're going to move your committee assignments. They should have moved them, but they didn't. But they didn't do it. Mistake. Absolute mistake. This is where I start talking about people who are political sociopaths. You got to do the right thing for the people of the United States. Eric Swalwell's a security risk. Done. No security clearance. That's the way that goes. That's the way that goes. I think WBAP between 8 and midnight is primed to be challenged. If you're looking for a local radio, WBAP needs new life. I have tried. WBAP, for those people that don't live in Texas or Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, WBAP is an august, brilliant old radio station that has been around forever. It is a great radio station. I have tried to get a job there, but for whatever reason, can't get through to the programming. So I keep crossing my fingers. But then again, and I was talking about this today with someone that I used to work for, Janet Bro, who used to be the CEO of the USA Radio Network. I was saying, what's out there? Is there something out there that's got my name on it? Have I been blackballed or what story? And she says, John, you're old and you're white. And that kind of invalidates you. And I go, okay. So we'll see. But the thing about it is I'm a very fair guy. I'm honest, straightforward. I point out stuff that does not go with the typical norm. And the reason is because this show's about truth. The show's not about politics. This show's about truth. It's about the Constitution. It's about the nation. It's about what these people should be doing when they're in the news, and they are in the news way too much. Way too much. Mac Thornberry was a great congressman from Texas. You know what? And I got to be honest with you, Mac Thornberry didn't spend a lot of time in the news. He just did his job over and over and over again. Brilliant dude. So anyway, let's move on. Swalwell. I was interacting with the chat room, by the way. So Swalwell, he's trying to rehabilitate himself. We're going to get to that here in just a couple of seconds. But let me get to the news. Yeah. McCarthy said information from FBI, and Swalwell said, hey, wait a minute, the Washington Post fact checker, who knows nothing. Glenn Kessler, report on what you know. You don't know what's in that FBI briefing, and you shouldn't know. And oh, by the way, if I was in your position, even if I did know what was in the FBI briefing, I wouldn't have reported it. It's none of our business. Eric Swalwell made a mistake. People get to do that. Doesn't mean we have to have some lurid scandal about everything. Crying out loud. Swalwell said the consequences of McCarthy's claims are much greater than simply being left off of key committees. And here's the story. It inspires death threats. People parrot what Kevin McCarthy is saying when they call and make threats. He knows that. We've told this to him. I've told this to him. I have, publicly broadcast to him that when you do this, it leads to threats to me, my wife, our kids. Recently, someone said they were going to rape and kill my children, and they were using the language that Kevin McCarthy was using. Pot, meat, kettle. Pot, meat, kettle. You think back to all the things you said about President Trump. You think about all the political, sociopathic things that you've thrown out at the feet of the American people. People are damaged by that stuff, sir. Now you know what it's like. I hope you learn from your mistakes. And now, let's get back to the reality here. Let's get back to one of the reasons why I want to bring this up before I get to Swalwell and Schiff. We can't do this. We cannot threaten these people with physical attacks. Can't do it. It plays into the scenario. These people, for whatever reason, call people who vote for President Trump domestic terrorists. That is outrageously bad. Right up to the point where you start threatening people like Eric Swalwell with rape and attacks and death threats. Stop it. 99.98% of the people who listen to this broadcast would never make a death threat in the first place, but there is that fringe. So the 99.98% of us that would never do that, if you hear about somebody that's actually texting, yeah, I told Derek Swalwell that I'd kick his butt and I'd paint his dog and I'd call the cops. Call the cops. It'll give the FBI something to do that isn't political. Seriously. I'm just saying. All right? Stop it. Stop doing this. Stop threatening these people. Stop showing up at demonstrations with weaponry. All the weapon you need is a little constitutional book that's got the Constitution in it. Cato Institute. Kind of weird, but they still have this perfect book. I keep it with me everywhere I go. Just take that. That's all you need. They can't argue with it. And if they do, it's because they're anti-American and they're proving your point, which is the point of a demonstration. Hello? So now let's get to Swalwell and Schiff. Swalwell is playing a victim to try to rehabilitate his political career. He's trying to point at vengeance when his wounds are self-inflicted. Schiff is trying to talk about constitutional things and how we should treat, as a matter of fact, Swalwell said this too, we should treat President Biden just like we treated President Trump. Well, then do it. But they won't. They won't do it. They're political sociopaths. All they see is Democrat policy. That's all they see. That's all they care about. They don't care about you. They don't care about Biden. They don't care about their own president. All they care about is power, which makes them sociopaths. And in the case of people who lie repeatedly, it makes them psychopaths. Representative Schiff, Representative Swalwell. But what these guys are doing is trying to rehabilitate their political lives. Schiff is talking about all kinds of things, so you can see him on Twitter. And I report back honestly, Representative Schiff, you are a liar. And if the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers can be thrown in jail for seditious conspiracy, how come you can't be thrown in jail for seditious conspiracy? The answer is a mystery. Because you should be thrown in jail for seditious conspiracy, for the attempted disenfranchisement of 74 million voters. I think it was 68 million the first time. I have to double check that voted for President Trump in the first place. You tried to remove him from office because he was a threat to your politics, political sociopath. And so here we are. No, you can't rehabilitate the unrehabilitatable. And if you think that was easy to say rehabilitatable, you try it. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. It is the Wells Report. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Let's go back to the chat room here. A couple of people are bringing up some things about putting the Wells Report back on a local radio station here in town. And I'd really love to do that, by the way. And what they're saying is, Gary says, I'm rooting for you to get back on the radio and getting some sponsors. Me too. Yeah, it would be nice to be able to get back in the saddle again. Mike Renwee says, ditto. Appreciate it, guy. Thank you. Thank you both. That's very, very nice. Gary says, I'm going to try WBAP again. Maybe KLIF 660 is pretty stacked. True. And then Mike points out, aren't these talk stations owned by the same company? Yes. KLIF and WBAP are owned by Cumulus Media, and I work for Cumulus Media. And my departure from there was contentious. And what happened in that particular case, involved lawyers, and what ended up happening is that I backed down Cumulus Media. And talk about vengeance. And I can see their point, but the simple case of the matter is that there were harsh words spoken on both sides. I am not someone who is offensive when it comes to, fights over contractual issues and so on and so forth, but I will defend myself. And there was absolutely no reason for some of the behavior that was exhibited by Cumulus Media after I left. Now, I'm over it, but they may not be. Not because we're not reasonable people. Okay. Not because we're not reasonable people, but because you got a choice of dealing with somebody who hasn't backed you down legally, and I've got the documents to prove it, or somebody that is unwilling to fight with you. Which do you hire? The answer is the person that provides the least resistance. And so I understand what they're doing. Cumulus owns KLIF, WBAP, and the ticket. That's right, Chris. Absolutely. Not that I would want to do sports radio. That's a great radio station, but I want to talk about real stuff. Burnt bridge at WBAP. I didn't burn it. They burned it. But once again, it's been a long time, and I'm over it. But it's like sometimes you hit somebody in the mouth and you're really, really surprised because they hit you right back. And if your process involves hitting people in the mouths, you really don't want to do it with somebody that's going to fight, that's going to hit back. And so I understand that. So I did not burn a bridge there, but they sure did. And 60 AM is owned by Salem Media. Salem is my favorite radio company. I actually, when I left KLIF, I didn't do what I normally do, which is to scatter radio tapes all over the country and try to go get a job. Because I'm staying in Texas. This is my home. I'm not going anywhere. But what I did was I looked at Salem and I called the corporate office in California and I said, I want to work for you guys. And they let me. And I worked there for 7 years and would work there again tomorrow. I would. It's one of the greatest things. And Chris, I'm not going to mention names, but you are completely correct. This is the Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I search the news all the time. When I wake up in the morning, I turn on the news. When I sit down at this desk to prepare the Wells Report, I'm looking at the news. When I'm finished with the Wells Report, I watch the news. Mainly, okay, this might be a little vanity here, but I watch the news. I watch the news after the show to see who's stealing from me. And once again, they're not stealing. You know, what I say is this. I learn two things when people take stuff that they hear on the Wells Report and put it on their shows. One, I'm on the right track. Okay, that's thing number one. Thing number two, I really don't care whether the people listening to the show use any of these points. I don't. Because I was talking about this today with a guy who listened to the show. I was so flattered. John was so nice. And and I said, I really found that this show got so much better when I took myself out of it. You know, the Wells Report is not about the Wells. It's about the report. The star on this broadcast is the news. And what I try to do is I try to give you a faithful, truthful, honest portrayal of the news. And while being an idiot is, shall we say, more popular, Mike Savage, Alex Jones, if being an idiot, just being just way out, just way crazy, you know, if that makes you a star, well, okay. You know, when I was doing music radio, I was a star. I truly was. But the thing about it is that's not the point. The point of all this, especially the Wells Report, the point of all of this is to provide a better broadcast so you have better things to think about. That's all this is. I want you to make a better decision in the ballot box. And so I point this stuff out. And I want you to be informed. So I point that stuff out. And I have time in my day to do the background stuff you can't do. And so we depropagandize the news here. And I take great pride in that. But it's not about me. Like I said, the news is the star on this. And so I don't really care whether people pass along the things I do. As a matter of fact, I encourage it. Go right ahead. I think it's amusing, you know, but still. Let me give you something that I found today in that news search, which is why I brought this up. I searched the news and I found this. The guy I'm about to share with you is Konstantin Kisin. He's got dual nationality in Russia and Britain, and he talks about woke in a lecture before the Oxford Union. I've got the video courtesy of YouTube, which, by the way, you can watch this broadcast on YouTube. You probably are right now. But what I'll say is I want you to listen to this because it's important. It explains someone's perspective on being woke. Konstantin Kisin is the guy you're about to hear.
Is that I am so tired of talking about woke culture. That's why it's gone too far, more than anything else. And I thank the other speakers for making the points for me, because it means I don't have to reiterate the point that no, free speech is not some right-wing reframing of whatever. It's the foundation of Western civilization. Upon this civilization is built and the Enlightenment values that led to it. I don't have to make the point that has been made by far better people in the past, that the only way to deal with the problem of racism is to treat people on the content of their character and nothing else. And the fact that woke culture seeks to overturn that is a new form of racism that we must all oppose. It means also I will not use this opportunity to say I told you so, as someone who spent the last 5 years warning people in the West that if we continue to erode our culture, if we continue to undermine our confidence in Western values, that our enemies enemies like Vladimir Putin will seek to capitalize on it. I will not make any of those points tonight at all. Instead, I'm not going to talk to those of you who already agree with me, which I imagine is most of you. I'm not going to talk to you because I imagine after everything you've heard tonight, you're going to vote for the proposition. I'm going to confess I will take your vote for granted. Tonight, I am the Labour Party and you are the Red Wall. Now, I want to talk to those of you who are woke and who are open to rational argument. A small minority, I accept. Because one of the tenets of wokeness is, of course, that your feelings matter more than the truth. But I believe in you. I believe there are those of you here who are woke, who are open to rational argument. So let me make one. We are told that your generation cares more than any other about one issue in particular, and that issue is climate change. We're told that many of you suffer from climate anxiety. You wish to save the planet. And for tonight, and tonight only, I will join you. I will join you in worshiping at the feet of St. Greta of climate change. Let us all accept right here, right now, that we are living through a climate emergency and our stocks of polar bears are running extremely low. I join you in this view. I truly do. Now, what are we to do about this huge problem facing humanity? What can we in Britain do? We can only do one thing. You know why? This country is responsible for 2% of global carbon emissions, which means that if Britain was to sink into the sea right now, it would make absolutely no difference to the issue of climate change. You know why? Because the future of the climate is going to be decided in Asia and in Latin America by poor people who couldn't give a shit about saving the planet. No, thank you. No, thank you. It's going to be decided by poor people in Asia and Latin America who don't care about saving the planet. You know why? Because they're poor. Because they're poor. I come from Russia, which is not a poor country, it's a middle-income country. 20% of households in Russia do not have an indoor toilet. What they have is an outdoor toilet. And I don't mean one of those nice portaloos that we get here. I don't even mean a Glastonbury portaloo. I mean a wooden shack with a hole in the ground that holds a collected fermented memory of the last 10,000 visits. How many of you are going to go home tonight and say, let's rip out our bathroom and erect a Siberian shithouse in the back garden? And if you're not, why should they? 120 million people in China do not have enough food. I don't mean that they don't get dessert. I mean they suffer from malnutrition. That means that their immune system is breaking down because they don't have enough food. You're not going to get them to stay poor. Imagine you're Xi Jinping, the leader of China. When you were 10 years old, there was a revolution, a cultural revolution in your country, and people came and they put your father in prison. The mother had to denounce him. Your sister killed herself. And you, no longer enjoying the protection of your formerly powerful father, were sent to a village where you lived in a cave house. And here you are, decades later. You have clawed your way up the bloody and greasy pole of Chinese politics to be the undisputed supreme leader of the very Communist Party that destroyed your family. And you know that the main thing you have to do to survive and to stay in power is to deliver the one thing that the people of China want: prosperity, economic growth. Where do you think climate change ranks on Xi Jinping's list of priorities? A third of all children who live in extreme poverty in the world live in India. That means they are starving and dying of preventable disease. Now, about 15 months ago, my wife got pregnant. Not me, because we're old school. And for 9 months, we talked about what our boy would look like, what he might do when he grows up. We looked at baby scans and videos on YouTube about what the fetus looks like at 9 months and 12 months and 20 months. And eventually he was born And he is this cute little bundle of joy. He's cuter than about 80% of puppies, right? Now, if you said to me that I had a choice, either my son had a serious risk of starving or dying from a preventable disease in the next year, or I could press a button and he would live. He would go to school. He would bring his first girlfriend home. He'd go to university and graduate and become a woke idiot. And then he'd get a job and get married and have children and become a man. But all I have to do is press this button. And for every day of my son's life, a giant plume of CO2 is going to get released into the atmosphere. Now, you're all very young, and most of you are not parents. Let me tell you something. There is not a parent in the world who would not smash that button so hard their hand bled.
True. Absolutely true.
You are not going to get these people to stay poor. You're not even going to get them to not want to be richer. And so, I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, there is only one thing we can do in this country to stop climate change, and that is to make scientific and technological breakthroughs that will create the clean energy that is not only clean, but also cheap. And no, thank you. And I want everyone to get home on time today, which is not going to happen. And the only thing that wokeness has to offer in exchange is to brainwash bright young minds like you to believe that you are victims, to believe that you have no agency, to believe that what you must do to improve the world is to complain, is to protest, is to throw soup on paintings. And we on this side of the house are not on this side of the house because we do not wish to improve the world. We sit on this side of the house because we know that the way to improve the world is to work, is to create, it is to build. And the problem with woke culture is that it's trained too many young minds like yours to forget about that. Thank you very much.
That is Konstantin Kisin, and he is brilliant. And I want to apologize for the language. I missed that when I reviewed this. I don't know how I missed it. I don't know. But as a matter of fact, the couple of points of order there were for him to moderate his language, in case you were wondering. So this guy talks about woke culture. And the simple case of the matter is, this. There is no easy way. You can't put your feelings or your sensibilities or lack thereof in front of your endeavor. You can't take an easy excuse. There is no easy excuse. There is no easy route. None. For anything. There's no easy way. There's no way to back someone down because you're offended at something and succeed. No way. What you have to do is you have to outwork it. You have to outwork it. And I know this intimately. And the thing about it is that what I have learned in my life is when you think you've arrived, you've quit. You've quit. The greatest thing about this job for me, the greatest part about this job for me is the learning I get to do. You know, I don't just sit here and read news copy from USA Today. I do read news copy from USA Today and the New York Times and 25 other sources. Because that's the most consistently concise way of doing it. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. What I need to do is get the information across quickly so that we can discuss it. But let me tell you, I have sweated blood to be able to bring this broadcast on the air. But then again, I also sweated blood when I was working on cars or selling them. I've sweated blood literally when I've trained soldiers for the Texas State Guard. Nothing is simple. Nothing is simple. And no one, even if they try to use your feelings as a political tool, no one gives a dang about your feelings. They're just using you. Stop it. Get, just like Mr. Kissen says, get to work. This is the Wells Report. Finish it up next. Thanks very much for being with us. Right back in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. I said I would tell you how you could support the broadcast. Here's how. Send it off to your friends. The lovely Yvonne, I call her Evie. Evie sends out a link to this broadcast to everybody she can, every single day. She's one of the most wonderful people I've ever met from a standpoint of just because she's a great human being, I know her, but also because she supports this broadcast. And she has ever since she heard it the first time. And that happened in 2006. And so if you can help us out by sharing it with your friends, if you think this show has value, by all means, please do. If you'd like to give us a thumbs up or give us a like, those matter. If you'd like to support the show financially, go to Patreon, patreon.com/The Wells Report. $1 or $2 a month. That's all it takes. It's all it takes. I'd like to keep the show on the air. I'd like to keep doing this for a living. And as I've said on a few occasions since I came back from deployment on the Texas State Guard, on Operation Lone Star for the Texas State Guard, there's a limit to how much I'm going to allow my wife Susan to subsidize this broadcast. So if you can't help us out, do it. It's $1 or so a month, and that's all it takes. Don't. I mean, would we take more? Sure, but just $1 every month. Go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. What Konstantin Kisin is talking about having to do with woke culture, it's destructive. And it's not just destructive in the United States. Because people will take something and they'll run with it. We saw the Davos Summit, the World Economic Forum, which was described by a former New York Times editor as a circle jerk. And the simple case of the matter is that's because people like Al Gore, John Kerry, so puffed up by their own importance, just have to keep getting farther and farther out to get the same effect. And before you know it, you're speaking gibberish. Well, what also happens is that a lot of times governments that use these kinds of things end up doing the same thing. Woke culture. It's now a national political issue. And so what does it do? Well, it starts affecting politics. And pretty soon, you're talking about how the atmosphere of the United States, the atmosphere of the world is going to kill us all. It's not. These people honestly believe that they can control the weather. It's absurd. But it's not just climate theory. Listen to this. This, by the way, from Fox News. Norway's University of Bergen. The best and brightest go to the University of Bergen, one of the places in Norway that houses a great university. Norway's University of Bergen is exploring a question. What is the question? Is white paint racist? The University of Bergen, Norway, is asking how the aesthetic of white paint helped the nation contribute to white supremacy and helped make the world whiter. Quote, whiteness is not only a cultural and societal condition tied to skin color privileges and systematic exclusion, but materialize everywhere around us, unquote. It continues. Although Norway is not a conventional colonial power, this project will show how the country has played a globally leading role in establishing white as a superior color. Until now, however, the story has been lesser known to scholars and the public. The study on whiteness and paint, coined as Norwhite, observes Norwegian-developed paint pigment titanium white through historic, aesthetic, and critical lenses to determine how the development of the color contributed to social transformation, as well as how the innovation led to planetary consequences. This is gibberish. This is absurdity. But this is a university chasing this question. First of all, my skin is not white. My skin's kind of a pinky, sort of browny, kind of whatever. Okay? Whatever. White paint is not racist. White paint is not anti any other color of skin. White paint is white paint. And yet, these people convince themselves that they're doing important work. They are wrong. And this is a colossal waste of time. It will implode of its own ridiculous weight, but until then, we will suffer. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I will see you again tomorrow. And there you go. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching the show today. God bless you and yours, and take good care. By the way, I did notice, Gary. I think you first heard me on KLIF. Yeah. And for those people that have been with us a long time, thank you so much. I couldn't do the show without you. And by the way, I am doing this show because of you, because I can't walk away. Can't do it. My beard is all white now, but I've already been labeled a racist hater and an everything-ophobe, poopy-faced domestic terrorist. So I guess add white supremacist to the string, but I still fire back. Yeah. We already know all that lib. What else you got? What are you talking about? Huh? Okay. I got to go. God bless all y'all.